We've been on a series about worry, 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 worry. And, as if a lot of us don't have problems enough with worrying, worry is a huge part of our culture and politics and all this stuff. And anymore, whenever you read newspapers and stuff, things are always worded in the worst possible way, right? Like, let's take, for instance, this tragedy in Ruidoso. I'm not trying to make light of it, but definitely a tragedy that happened. And so one of the newspapers, I'm going through every day checking on fire containment and different stuff. And then there's this one newspaper, deadly fire still rampages in the face of the firefighters. It's like, hold on. First off, they've got it largely contained. Okay, calm down. Let's not try to just freak people out. And 2 people so far have died. Okay, it's not like we're talking about mass, slaughter here. And I'm not trying to make light of it, but it seems like they're trying, in the newspapers and stuff, trying to make things worse than they are. If we can word it any way as possible to be the worst of the worst, let's do that. And so it's all around us, this worry. And so we've looked at, 2 weeks ago, we looked at the first answer to worry, which was steadfast faith. Faith regardless of what's going on, regardless of how it all plays out. Then we looked at the second answer to worry, which was focusing on God, not the problems, which obviously, admittedly, is very difficult. And today we're going to look at the third answer to worry, which is thankfulness. And I think this is modeled very well by the Apostle Paul. He had a very good time of ministry. He wrote a lot of the New Testament. He started a bunch of churches. I don't even know if we have a full record of all the churches that he started, but regardless, he started a bunch of them. And then he got imprisoned and spent some years, in Jerusalem and then over in Rome and stuff. And during this time when he was in prison, he'd been there for a while, and at first it seemed kind of good, but after about 3 years or so of being in Rome, things started to look like they weren't so good. The kind of they just didn't seem to be working out. And it seems like, well, was Paul discouraged or not? And we're going to look at a book that he wrote during this time, right at the end of his Roman imprisonment. See, shortly after he wrote this book that we're going to talk about, he went back into ministry, and he went, and hit Spain and did all kinds of stuff, and he didn't die for a couple more years. But he didn't know that when he wrote this book. It looked like this was maybe the end of the end here for him. And the book that we're going to look at is called Philippians. On Monday, I was I was very upset on Monday. Last week was just, not this last week, 2 weeks ago was a very draining week, and then led over into the next week, and I was just so frustrated that those kinds of days that come. So I decided it would be in everyone's best interest if I didn't write any sermons on Monday, and I didn't do any visitations on Monday, because I was like, okay, whatever I say is going to be snarky. You're going to have the worst sermon you've ever heard, the worst visitation you've ever heard. Let's just not do those things today. And so that's kind of, I guess you could just say, an off day. Well, what about Paul? What's Paul's solution to this very frustrating situation? Well, Philippians 1:3, it says this. This is how he starts his letter. He starts off saying, hey, Paul here, writing to you guys over in Philippi. And then he goes in verse 3. This is the first thing he really has to say. I give thanks to my God for every remembrance of you. What a way to start a letter when you're discouraged in a really bad situation. I thank God for every remembrance of you. So instead of I have it so bad here, things just keep going from bad to worse. Instead of that, he starts off by saying, thank God for you. Complete disconnect from the situation he's in. When I'm in bad situations, I don't know about you guys do, but I'm just thinking, this is really frustrating. If you could just bail me out of the situation, God, that'd be great. But here we have Paul starting off with, thank God for you. And it's not fake. He's not being fake, but you can't tell the situation he's in just from the way he's talking. And when you're thankful for your past, look what happens. Okay, thankfulness for the past causes hope for the future. And we're going to turn back to this, but look at the way this plays out in verse 6. I am sure of this, that he who started a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. See, he was thankful for them for what happened. In my every remembrance of you, this is the past. So because he was so thankful for his past, it led to hope for the future. See, now we're going to talk about this in just a minute, but what happens is we look on our past with regret. We overlook what God has done, and then it causes us to look at the future with dread. And then we overlook what God's doing here in the now, and we just get a very ungrateful, bitter attitude. So let's kind of unwrap that, okay? Thankfulness definitely seems fake to people who are discouraged. Did you know that? Ever been in a really bad situation and somebody's trying to discourage you and you say, well, what do you know? Sometimes we read through the book of Philippians and we do the exact same thing. Well, what does he know? I mean, he doesn't know what I'm going through. Well, you're right, he doesn't know what you're going through. He's in heaven. He's been dead for thousands of years now. However, okay, as he details as in many of his books, I mean, he'd been beaten, had a bunch of opposition within the church and without the church, been imprisoned, all kinds of bad stuff had happened to him, as well as physical disabilities that he had as well. I mean, this guy has been through a lot of stuff. Absolutely. I mean, we don't have time to detail all those things, but we read this kind of a book, and because it's so hopeful in Philippians, we overlook that he was writing it while he was in the pits of despair. He doesn't know what I'm going through. And the thing is, okay, here's the thing. Thankfulness seems fake to people who are discouraged because, and this is something that we oftentimes overlook about our worry eclipses faith. Our worry eclipses thankfulness. Our worry eclipses joy in our life. Worry sucks us dry. It blocks that stuff out. And like I said, it makes the future seem very scary. We start looking at things with dread. God's disappointed me back then, he'll disappoint me in the future. And before we know, all we can focus on is the thing we're so worried about. Worry also blinds you to God's blessings. Well, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this? And your heart starts racing, right? Your mind starts going crazy. You're up at night. You're waking up thinking about it. You're having nightmares about it. The whole time you're at work, you're not paying attention. You just Well, we never stop and say, but look at this. Look at what God has done. Look at where He's brought us to, and calm our hearts. No. We work ourselves up, and there's blessings all around us all the time, right? From the air that we breathe, the life we live, no matter how hard it might be, to what's going on right here. We overlook those things, and it's that thankfulness that we miss out on. It's that thankfulness. See, worry will kill your thankfulness, but if you lack thankfulness in your heart, worry will crop up. It will. Thankfulness keeps things at bay. So worry stills your thankfulness. It keeps you in the fear of what's coming in the future. It reminds you of the disappointment from the past, and which takes us to verse 12, because you assume that Paul is going to do the same thing in the book of Philippians that we do. Then we get to verse 12, and he says this instead. Now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually advanced the gospel. See, with us, we start worrying, and we lose that thankfulness, and we start thinking about all the disappointments from the past, and you expect Paul to do the same. But Paul makes a conscious effort in the book of Philippians not to do that. He's combating the situation he's in with thankfulness. And I would even say that Philippians is probably the most thankful book in the whole Bible. And yet it's written under such dire circumstances. God can give his revelation when we're in the dark. But when we know what's up and we have all the answers, God can't speak much because we're not listening. Ecclesiastes, right? He goes through all these problems and he's completely unsatisfied with life. Complete despair. And so he writes a book about the meaning of life. Job goes through so many heartaches and pains. We now have a book about him dealing with why do righteous people suffer. It's in those pits that God can give us that revelation. So Paul's not bitter. I mean, look at chapter 4, verse 10 is a good example of this. I rejoice in the Lord greatly because once again you renewed your care for me. You were in fact concerned about me, but lacked the opportunity to show it. See, this is what Paul was up, okay? Imagine this, okay? Pretend like you are Paul, you're in prison. This church at Philippi, they have not checked in on you. They haven't gifted you. They haven't blessed you. So what are you going to think in your natural way of thinking? Well, nobody cares about me. They just forgot about me. Right? We're going to start letting those bitter thoughts rule. But what does Paul say? I rejoiced in the Lord, past tense, rejoiced, past tense, in the Lord greatly because once again you renewed your care for me. You were in fact concerned about me before, but you lacked the opportunity to show it. And so now he opens up his letter and says, I thank God for every remembrance of you. And you can tell he's also not jealous. Why me, God? Why is this happening to me? Why didn't it happen to them instead? Because of the way he's talking. Those kinds of attitudes rub off. See, a poor attitude it'll make your worry worse. When you have a bad attitude, it'll make your worry worse. But if you worry, you'll justify whatever attitude you have. It'll always be somebody else's fault. I'm like this because of the situation I'm in, or because I have it so bad, or because this is happening. That's why I'm worried. If it wasn't for this, then I wouldn't worry. Worry has that way of justifying our bad attitude. And God help us when we get in that place where we think, it's not me. It's them. They just need to change. I'm not going to. Nope. I mean, first off, that causes so much tension in your marriage. When you get to that place, no, I'm fine. It's called arrogance and pride. That's a terrible thing to allow in your marriage. But even assuming that your marriage is fine, just assume. It's going to affect your quality of work. It's going to affect your quality of life. It's going to affect your health. It's not really something that, should be laughed off about. See, when we go through worry, we oftentimes compare to those who have it better. We're obviously assuming because we don't know what other people are going through. But we see other people and we say, well, they have it better. They're not going through what I had to go through. And for this reason, worry becomes a fount of many sins. See, it starts out as worry, something that's just playing in your mind, but eventually it'll start spreading, and eventually you become an angry person, a bitter person, a jealous person. And so you have all these different sins that are sprouting from worry. I'm not trying to tell you worry is this great sin that God will never forgive you. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying worry will develop other sins in your life, and it will take over. It's like if there's anybody here who's ever been crippled by panic attacks, do you know what the only way out is? To get up off your butt and go, and do it afraid. You don't wait until you feel better. You get up off your butt and you do it while you're afraid. And you do the whole time shaking in your boots, and you keep going. That's how it works. You don't wait until things are all better. You don't wait until there's clear skies. And sometimes we lie to ourselves and say something like this, well, God won't give us more than you can handle. Right? Have you ever heard somebody tell you that? God will never give you something. That's not true. God does give you more than you can handle. But this is the good news. God won't give you more than He can handle. See, that's the focus there. You will be overwhelmed. You will be overburdened. Let's look, for instance, at 2 Corinthians, and this is one of my favorite verses in the whole Bible. Well, I guess it's 2 verses. We don't want you to be unaware, brothers and sisters, of our affliction that took place in Asia. We were completely overwhelmed beyond our strength. Completely overwhelmed beyond our strength. So that we even despaired of life itself. Are you hearing what he's saying? We despaired of life itself. Oh, that I'd never been born. He's despairing of life itself. Indeed, we felt that we had received the sentence of death. God has abandoned us, right? We felt like we received the sentence of death. So that we would not trust in ourselves, but on God who raises the dead. See, God does give you more than you can handle. He doesn't give you more than He can handle. But the problem is we actually have to reach out in faith. See, for those of you who've gone through severe grief, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're overwhelmed. You're grief-stricken. Okay? That's just the way of it. There's no shortchanging that. You can't get around it any faster. It happens as it happens. But there comes a point, sometimes after 10 or so years, where you have to make a choice to be thankful, to keep going. It's not going to happen when the grief first hits, but eventually, and you know what I'm talking about if you've ever been there. There comes a point when you have to make that choice. I'm going to be thankful. And you have to turn that corner. God won't give you more than He can handle. So then we get down to verses 17 through 19 back in Philippians. And Paul writes this. The others, he's talking about how there are people who don't like Paul. And they're kind of being a little bit of jerks about it. And so this is what he says about them. The others proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, thinking that they will cause me trouble in my imprisonment. They're going out of their way to irritate Paul. What does it matter? only that in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is proclaimed. And in this I rejoice. I've had a lot of feelings about a lot of different people, and I don't think I've ever had this. Here Paul is with these people who are, being stupid. They're being stupid. And Paul, instead of getting all irritated and bent out of shape, the gospel is being proclaimed. Yes, and I will continue to rejoice because I know this will lead to my salvation. Wow. So here we have Paul completely surrounded by the irritants of his life, and he's still finding the best. And how is he able to do that? Thankfulness. Because thankfulness shows us the beauty in our ashes. There's going to be times in your life when you look around and all you see are the ashes around you. Everything has failed. All my dreams have died. Everybody I know and loved about, they're dead. Everything's gone. I have nothing left. But God makes beauty from those ashes. And he does it through thankfulness. He does it through thankfulness. See, everybody wants God to do a big miracle in their life. But they don't want God to change my heart and give me a thankful heart. We don't want to rejoice in the trouble. We want the trouble to be gone. God wants us to rejoice regardless of the trouble. Completely different focus. We're concerned about all the outcome. God is concerned about the journey. Right? Don't we justify all kinds of evil stupidity by saying, well, the ends justify the means? Meanwhile, God is saying, no, they don't. They really don't. Thankfulness also shows us purpose in our mess. Because without thankfulness, what we have is we have a bunch of chaotic things that have happened in our life for no reason. That's what we have without thankfulness. We see all these woes and troubles that we can't get over. And every time that another thing hits, you carry the weight of all the things that happened before. And you think, no, I've gotten over it. But then something else comes and it stirs it up again. And you start remembering all the other things too. And so then you start going crazy. And meanwhile, thankfulness is nowhere to be seen. So what was Paul's secret? Well, I think he had three. Three from Philippians at least. So Philippians 4:13 says this. It says, I am able to do all things through him who strengthens me. So hold on. Let's kind of build on this, okay? So worry cripples faith, okay? We know what faith says. Faith says God is in control. Faith says I stand on God's promises. Faith says whatever God says, that's what's going to be. That's what faith says. Worry is kind of an anti-faith. Worry comes along and it says but. But. So it looks kind of like this, okay? Well, God is in control, whatever situation you're in, just insert this into that. God is in control of the situation. But, this is where worry comes in, this is beyond God. God is in control, but this time he doesn't care. God is in control, but maybe he never forgave me for that one time I messed up on that thing. You know that thing that I did. God is in control, but that doesn't mean that this is going to work out for my good. I could die from this. See, worry continually brings up the but. But. So here we have Paul writing in Philippians. I am able to do all things through him who strengthens me. Assurance of God. First one of Paul's secrets. And you can even see as we turn to Philippians 1:21, somewhere over here. There it is. Philippians 1:21, it says, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. I think Paul moved past it. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I'm trusting in God. Whatever's going to happen. And there is obviously a limit to that. My mom used to sing that stupid song. Oh my gosh. What is it? How does it go? Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. You remember that song? Man, I hate that song. I hate that movie. The mountains, music, sound of... What? Sound of Music, is that what it is? Oh my... What? Doris Day? Okay, well, I don't remember, guys. This is going to bug me. It's going to keep me up all night, but I shouldn't delay the sermon for it. Either way, I hated that song. My mom used to always sing it. And whenever we got upset, that was her little, not snide like in a mean, hateful way, but snide like in a joking way. You know, we'd be like, oh, Mom, what about this? And she'd, oh, whatever will be, will be. And I'd be like, Mom, give us an answer here. What are we doing here? But anyways, where was I getting with this? Sorry, I was flooded with a memory. And just, oh my goodness. My mom, she was a character. Okay, we're talking about not Doris Day. We're talking about, okay, so there is a limit to this. Like, yes, God, our actions do matter. You know, stepping out in faith and doing something changes things. Absolutely. We see that in the book of Esther. Yeah, absolutely. But with that being said, we still have to reach the place of trusting in God through it. So the first the first one of Paul's secrets of thankfulness is his assurance of God. We see that from Philippians 4:13. God controls. Okay, all right. However, we are still supposed to control our thoughts, right? But if you notice, because of Paul's assurance of God, he could control his thoughts a lot easier, because his faith wasn't in what the situation was. His faith was in God. So then we get to the second one of Paul's secrets in the book of Philippians, is he says that he rejoices in the Lord. Look at Philippians 3:1. It says this, okay? It says, "In addition, my brothers and sisters, rejoice in the Lord. To write to you again about this is no trouble for me and is a safeguard for you." So rejoice in the Lord. Well, what does that mean, to rejoice in the Lord? It basically means let him be your source of satisfaction. You're rejoicing not in money, in wealth, in power or position or friends or family or people or anything else, any of the things that happens in the newspaper, any of the things that happens anywhere. You're not rejoicing in that. Your rejoicing is in the Lord. Now, basically, once again, that's you're rejoicing in him as your satisfaction. And that takes us to the third one of Paul's secrets that we see in the book of Philippians, and that's that Paul had an amazing, correct priorities. He's just amazing with this. Look at this, okay? And I'm going to contrast this with how I have my priorities versus how Paul has his, okay? Check this out. My goal, okay, I'm in this struggle. What's my goal? What do I want from this thing? What do I want to happen from all this? My goal is to know him being Christ, and the power of his resurrection. That sounds good. We're all on board there. But this is where Paul loses us, okay? And the fellowship of his sufferings, being conformed to his death. That's where you lost me, Paul. I want to be conformed to the life and the joy and the, happiness, 24/7, nothing but good, right? That's how we think about things. I mean, as for me myself, my goal in life is oftentimes just to avoid discomfort. Huh? It's not God put you through a bad situation. You're like, I want to be out of this. Whatever I have to do, I want to be out of this. My goal is to avoid discomfort, and I want all my prayers answered. That's my goal. Well, Paul's goal wasn't that. Paul's goal was to share in the sufferings of Christ and his death. And he was right on track with that. So I want to ask you real quick, in your suffering, whatever suffering you're going through right now, are you on track to share the sufferings of Christ? Well, hey, you're in a good place. See, just because your priorities aren't being met doesn't mean that God's wrong. It means that your priorities might be wrong. It's very natural, and it would be natural for Paul to say something along lines of this, okay? First off, God abandoned me because of the situation I'm in. That's all the proof I need. Okay. Second off, nobody cares because not even the church at Philippi has encouraged me. And then the third thing that would have been very natural for Paul, everybody is against me. See, because these preachers are against me, because they're just trying to stir the pot, that means everybody's against me. Because we get real short-sighted tunnel vision, right? So, okay, something bad's going wrong. We see every single time somebody does the smallest thing that could be misconstrued as offending us. Just if there's any way that it could be misunderstood, that's the way we'll take it. And, maybe that's not exactly rooted on reality, but rather our worry just kind of changes things. Okay, so when I was a kid, I got in trouble. I don't remember what I did, but I did something, and my mom was not too happy about it, okay? So somewhere along the lines, I got it in my head that it was a real good idea to take off and run. Keep in mind, I'm only about 7 or something, but I take off and I run. I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen. Things are turning bad. It's scary over here. I'm out. So I just start running across the yard. And our yard's not that big, you know. And my mom starts chasing after me. And she was not what you'd call a physically fit person. So she's huffing and puffing, and she's mad at this point. She's really mad. And she didn't like it when like other people, when the attention's on you, you know. She didn't like it when the attention was on her. She was a very, keep me out of the limelight. And so she was already upset because maybe the neighbors are seeing this. She doesn't like to run anyways. And then I'm just obeying. So there's just like this whole long thing that's just not going well for her. And she caught me. And wow, did I regret running. Let's just say that was the last time I ran. But I tell that story for a reason. I'm not just conjuring up the past. See, at that moment, her love for me didn't matter. I was worried. And that worry overshadowed everything that was going on in life. That's exactly what happens in life. It doesn't matter what God has done, who God is, what the Bible says, doesn't matter. We go into like this feral mode. The worry is all there is. And so we're tearing our hair out, trying to find some way out of it, and we're just making the situation worse. Meanwhile, if we just chill out for a second, okay? God's got something. If you just endure the pain, and things will get better. When you try and run from it, things always get worse. I mean, for those of you who've ever gone to counselors, isn't this what they say? Don't try and rush the process of grief. You got to walk through it. It's just something that you got to go through. You can't shortchange it. It's the exact same thing with worry. So the thing that would have been natural for Paul to do, he didn't do that. Instead, he did this. Chapter 4, verse 8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any moral excellence, and if there's anything praiseworthy, dwell on those things. When you're worried or grief-stricken or whatever's going on in your life, is that what you dwell on? No. I tell you one even better. As for me, I wake up in the middle of the night, and I like to remind myself of all the stupid things I used to do, you know. Like that one time when I was a teenager, and I said that one, oh my goodness. Here's one that haunts me still to this day. I was at college, and me and Gracie were there. So we were dating at that time. We weren't engaged. So we're standing next to each other, and there's one of my friends there, and we're talking about Star Wars. And somewhere in my head, I thought this would be a funny joke. So without thinking that I'm talking to a female friend, I say, haha, you will kiss me. And I'm like, oh. As soon as I said it, I realized, in context, this does not look good. So, and I died inside. And every so long when I'm just happy enough, my brain reminds me of that, you know, just so I'm not, I never sleep too good, so it can bring up these old reels. And worry does that a lot to us. You know, it blinds us to the things, all the good things, and we just highlight all the bad things. Highlight all the things that there was to worry about. And so we see here from chapter 4, verse 8, yes, absolutely, this is an unseen battle. It's a battle of the mind. It's a battle where you have to learn how to control your thinking, and that absolutely does matter. But we see here that worry is a spiritual battle. See, a lot of times we go through life forgetting that our enemy is like a lion. He's just waiting to devour us. And anything that he can bring by, anything really, that he can bring by. He wants to discourage you. He wants you to worry. Don't look at this worry as, oh, it's just something I'm going through. It's just who I am. No. It's something that Satan is using to blind you to God's goodness. It's something that Satan is using. Now, I'm going to say he caused it. I'm not saying that. But he uses the tools that he has. And so you start something going, he'll take that. He'll use whatever he can. And he'll use it to blind you to thankfulness. You don't remember what God has. All you have is worry. This is all there has ever been. And so we say things like this, because it takes so long to control our thinking. It takes time to do that. And so because of that, we say this, well, I just can't stop worrying. This is who I am. I'm a worrywart. Worrywart. Boy, that's hard to say. It's just who I am. You can't stop worrying yet. Yet. Just because you're having a hard time with something doesn't mean that it's always going to be like this. Right? Grief. Okay? Going back to the example of grief. Worry and grief have a lot in common. When you're grieving, you wake up the day after, and it's almost like it didn't happen, right? You're like, that's not real. Right? It was like a dream or something. And then a couple months go, and you just get kind of mad. You know, and you just start kind of chewing people out. And then a couple more months go by, And you start crying about everything, and you're like, why did they kill the dog? That was such a good movie, but couldn't they have saved the dog? Timmy's down the well, you knew it. And then you come to another point when you realize this is the way things are. It's okay. I don't like it, but it's okay. Worry is a lot like that. It's a lot like that. It seems so crushing. I'll never stop worrying. I'll never get over this. But you will. You will. You just got to give it time and keep on the right path. See, this is why religion doesn't help us with things like worry, with the real world. Because it tells us this: you should feel bad for worrying. Well, I already feel bad worrying, so I should feel bad for feeling bad. That doesn't help, right? But if you know, yes, you're going through a night, God will see you through the night, and you'll live to see the dawn. Ha! This I can deal with. This is good, and this is why it's important to know this. God has a plan. Paul knew this. So we see that with his three secrets to thankfulness. You may lose your wealth, your family, your friends. Paul talks about that. I've skipped over it, though. Philippians 4, probably 11 through 12 or so, he talks about that. And then he says, but still, from 4:13, I'll read it since I'm here anyways. Come on now. It's here somewhere. Anybody have the Jeopardy theme song? Goodness sakes, where is it? Can you just skip to it on the screen? Philippians 4:13. Do you have it? You don't have it? I don't have it. Nobody has it. Just goodness sakes. Well, I'm going to count my losses. We're going to move on. Thank you. Thank you. You wouldn't think that'd be so difficult. But it was. It was. I know I have it here somewhere. Yeah, it doesn't matter. See, now I have to find where I was on the thing, on the slides. Ugh. To fool you with it. Technology, huh? Well, they can keep it. And we always ask ourselves things like this. Well, why do I feel like this? How come God is in this place where he's kind of just left me in the lurch? How come he's not, intervening on my behalf? How come he's not doing anything to make me feel better about the situation? And the thing is, yeah, but what are you allowing yourself to be thinking about? See, we want to think about things that aren't praiseworthy. We want to think about things that are not good, not commendable. But then we want to walk away from it feeling good when we're not thinking about good. That's not going to work. Sometimes we feel bad because of how we're thinking. Think about this, okay? For those of you who are married, you're getting a conflict with your spouse, right? And what happens when you're in that conflict? You only focus on the bad. You go back 10 years thinking about all the bad things. You can't think about a single good thing that they've done, but you know every single thing they've done for the past 10 years is bad. Right? And don't do that thing where you say, yeah, she does that all the time. Okay, hold on. We do that too. Calm down. Calm down. Well, maybe I should just move on. I mean, think about the way that gossip spreads, right? Gossip starts very innocently. It's one person says one thing one time about somebody. It seems very, very low key. And then all of a sudden, that's all the two of you talk about. It becomes a kind of Pandora's box you can't close, a trap that you get stuck in, where now all that you do is you're always talking about that person. It can be the pastor, or your spouse, or your kids, or your coworker. It doesn't matter who it is. Whoever it is, you get in a rut where every single time you're with this person and you're talking about that person, it's going to be bad. You don't like the way they do this. You don't like the way they do that. You don't like the way they do this. You don't like, and that's all you can focus on. Worry does the exact same thing. It starts out very small and very innocent. Ooh, yeah, this is scary. Oh, this is really scary. Oh, it's even more scary than I thought. So now all we're doing is, and now the next situation comes up, we worry even more. Then the next one, we worry even more. Until finally we're stuck in this spiral of worry. But worry isn't all that bad, is it? There's at least two ways it's not bad. First off, worry can be a warning not to proceed. Sometimes God removes his peace from you, and just as a way of letting you know, this isn't good, and you don't have peace in your heart, and you kind of worry about it. That's not a bad way. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. If you're making a big decision and God has removed peace from that situation, either don't make a decision or don't make that decision. See, we like to think I have to make a decision right now. God doesn't really work like that. A lot of times, you'll have a deadline for when you have to make a decision, and God's answer will be far past that. And you can settle for having your quick answer, or you can endure, and God will give you the right answer. And then the second way that I can think of that worry helps, it's not a bad thing in this aspect, we're going to skip 30, but I'll go right back to it, Grace, is something that Paris Reidhead said, and that's worry causes fellowship with God. Okay? Paris Reidhead said this. He said, most Christians do not have fellowship with God. They have fellowship with each other about God. Most of the time, we Christians don't have fellowship with God. We have fellowship with each other about God. Right? I mean, let's take the example of worship. And I'm not, the reason why I want to bring this up as an example is because I used to be a worship pastor. With worship in the modern American audience, you have to have the perfect instrument, the perfect song. Everybody has to do perfect. In God's kingdom, it has absolutely nothing to do with the music or the singers or anything. Nothing. It has to do with the heart. And it comes out through your actions. Right? The words that you sing, they don't have some imbued force up here from the stage. It comes from your heart. And it goes out. Well, most of the times, we don't like that. We don't want to start our worship on Monday with how we're treating people and how we're seeking God. We want to start on Sunday morning, and then when the Sunday service is over, we want it to be done. Worship is a lifestyle, not a song that we sing on a stage. It's a complete different change. And once we cross that line, we get past having fellowship with each other about God, and we start having fellowship with God. And this is one of the good things about worry, is it causes us to move past that outer court of having fellowship with other people and brings us into the holy place of seeking God's face. And maybe that's a poor example, but I think that it fits. You could even say, well, you are not changing, you are choosing. It's been said very often. And it's the same thing with worry, which you're not changing, you're choosing. I know a lot of people that I've talked to, they leave the church because of Christians. They criticize Christianity because of Christians. And they have a lot of good reasons, a lot of good points about the way that Christians have failed historically. However, our faith is in God, not in man. I don't come to church because of all of you guys are perfect. I don't pastor this church because all of you are perfect. You probably don't come to hear me preach because I'm the perfect preacher with the perfect... No. I'm not that great on a stage. I'm even less what's it called? Less wowing off stage. I mean, I'm just not that much to look at. I'd be the stray dog, that's scurrying down the road. You think that thing's been eating rats on the street. But anyways, our faith is in God, not in man. It has to move past that. And worry is great because it causes that to happen. A few final things I want to say about worry before we wrap up for today. Worry oftentimes shows your misplaced trust. Your misplaced trust. For instance, sometimes you'll worship God and you'll think that you're worshiping Him, but you're actually worshiping a fake God from your own image. And through your struggle that you're going through, God is showing you who He really is. And it's causing your faith to be shook because you didn't have faith in God. You had a faith in a God of your own choosing. Same thing could be said for a situation you're in, right? I have faith that the situation is going to work out. It's all going to work out. It's going to be fine. Well, that whole rainbow happy talk makes us feel good, but it doesn't actually produce any results. It's like when people say, I'm sending you good vibes. Okay. It's not going to do anything. I mean, you can send whatever vibes you want. It's not going to change the situation, but prayer will. Prayer will. Or think about religion. I have faith in my religion if I do all the things right. I have faith in people. They'll do the right thing in the end. Okay. That's gutsy. I don't think Adolf Hitler followed that philosophy very well. He didn't do do the right thing in the end. Worry makes you either grow or shrink. And this is what I'm talking about the benefit of worry. It makes you grow or shrink. Worry prevents you from staying still. See, the areas that you worry about the most are the areas that you trust God in the least. And worry reveals that. How would you know if you weren't trusting God in an area of your life if there wasn't worry? How would you know? See, worry shows you where you need to grow. It shows you. Are you worried about politics? Are you worried about your health? Are you worried about the safety of yourself or others close to you? Are you worried about your family? That's where you're not trusting God as much. Philippians 4:6 says this, don't worry about anything, but in everything through prayer and petition with thanksgiving. There it is again. With thanksgiving. Present your request to God. I know many people I've talked to that they worry excessively about their spouse's safety. Have you ever done that? What if this happens to my spouse? What if this happens? And you can't even see straight. You're worried about it so much. Thankfulness focuses us on God, on what God has done. And because we're thankful and we're focusing on what God has done, then we become hopeful of what He will do. Because we're thankful for what He has done. See, look at your greatest life tragedies and find thankfulness for what God did in them, and you can move forward. But keep them as tragedies, and you'll never move over. You'll never move forward. You'll stay there forever. And as we get that hopefulness for what He will do, we get kind of grounded in what is. We start seeing things around us that we were overlooking. Hey, I have lots of things to be thankful for. I forgot about this. Well, what about this? See, and because we're focused on the one thing that we don't have to be thankful for, all the other stuff just got blown out of proportion. You start to see what you have not. I said that wrong. You start to see what you have, not what you don't have. You start to see what has happened, not what could have happened. When I look over the course of my life, for instance, there's so many different things. I almost died as a baby. They took me in the hospital. They had no idea what was going on. And then God healed me. I almost drowned in the tub. I almost got in a car wreck and died. I was coming real fast behind the bar at the bottom side of the trailer. There's a name for it. When a diesel's hauling a trailer, there's this bar that they put there. And my car was lower than the standard, so it would have taken my head clean off. And I missed it literally by that much. And all that happened was my hubcap got bent, or not my hubcap, the actual tire itself. Lots of different things like that happened. I almost died in the hospital when we were been married for just a couple years. I mean, you go down through the list. There's so many different times that God has intervened. But when you're worried about the future, do you remember any of those times? No. You have to bring them back up. See, Maria and Joe just went through a really rough situation, didn't they? Joe could have died. It did not look good. But God intervened. Now, what happens when another thing comes up to worry about? Is Maria never going to struggle with worry ever again? No, of course not. Satan is going to try and get her to stop focusing on all the things she has to be thankful for and get her on what to be worried about. One last story. I've already brought my mom up two or three times, so let's go ahead and bring one more story into this. I used to pray every single day for my mom, a very special prayer. See, my mom, she always wanted to see her son get saved. And she always had to go through these things that she wasn't a big fan of, like really hard situations. And she always had to try to have this positive attitude about it. And so she went through a lot of struggles, and really her whole life was her life. She lived a hard life. I'll just leave it at that because I don't want to get sidetracked. But she really had a rough way of things. And so I used to pray for her every single day that she would die in victory. I always wanted that for her. No matter what I was praying for, I prayed for that. There's a reason I'm bringing this up. Because she didn't go to the grave in victory. She died in a hospital. In Colorado. With none of her family. Alone.
Just her and Dad. My brother was outside, but she never saw her son saved. The situation she was going through, they were never righted. When she died, they were wrong. And the thing that made it even worse is after she died, everybody pretended like they were on her side the whole time. I have a point. You see, I put demands on God, and he let me down. He disappointed me because I put my own demands on God. God, if you're going to take my mom, let her go in victory. And God had his own plan. And I say this for a reason. I know you're probably wanting me to move on. Just hold on. Hold on. You see, I got consumed with the worry and the bitterness, and it just didn't seem right. It didn't seem right. It seemed like God abandoned. But Mom always wanted to die in her sleep. There's a lot of times that she could have died, and instead God kept her alive until she was asleep, and she died in her sleep. Just like she wanted. Now hold on. I have a reason for saying this, okay? I can't see my page, but it's here somewhere. You see, worry and thankfulness are at war with this. You have in your life, real life, not things that there's an easy answer for. You're not going to say the perfect prayer and everything's fine. It's not going to happen. And as you go throughout your life, you're going to have all these different things that God disappointed you on. And they're going to become weights that drag your faith down. And the only way to get past those weights is with thankfulness. So now let me kind of bring up why I said that story, okay? Because thankfulness sees the answered prayer. My mom died in her sleep like she wanted. The answered prayer. But bitterness, which worry grows from, sees the unanswered prayer. But God, I pray that you'd go in victory. And you can focus on either or. The answered prayer or the unanswered prayer. But your worry will never grow if your perspective doesn't grow. You will always have worry if your perspective doesn't grow. Always. So these past disappointments, they start aiding future worry. And it becomes hard to pray. It becomes hard not to worry. It gets to the point where I don't even know what to pray. I don't know what to pray for. Thankfulness is the cure. Thankfulness will get you past it. Thankfulness will when nothing else will. Thankfulness. Now, I can choose right now what to do with the rest of my life, can't I? God, you didn't answer my one prayer that I prayed for Mom. I prayed every day. I prayed with earnestness. Or I could say, thank you, God, for answering my mom's prayer and taking her in her sleep just like she wanted. As you look back on your life, you're going to see some things that stick out as the greatest disappointments of your life, the greatest times that your dreams died, the greatest letdowns. And it's really up to you whether you want to see the answered prayer or the unanswered prayer. So steadfast faith will outlast worry. That's what we talked about 2 weeks ago. Focusing on God, that will reduce worry. We talked about that last week. But thankfulness will weaken worry. It'll make it where it doesn't have so much of a hold. If you can just stay thankful in all situations, it's never too bad. Join me in prayer, please. Lord, I just pray that you touch those who are hurt. that as they struggle through worry, you would see what they're going through and you just give them peace from the Holy Spirit. That your anointing would be on them. That whatever fires you call them to, whatever floods you call them through, the Lord, you'd give them peace as they stumble their way forward. Lord, that your church would be united in their pain, arm in arm, as we stumble west. Lord, that you'd show your mercy, and you'd remind us of all your many blessings. Lord, in this house of God, do not let the past be glorified, the past failures and hurts be glorified, but let only your name and your goodness be glorified. In the temple of our hearts, God, that we wouldn't revel in our pain and our suffering and in all of the things that went wrong, but that we would glory in the Lord. That in our heart there would be a holy temple, sanctified only for you, in devotion. We're going to go to prayer. If there's anybody who has any kind of a need, any need whatsoever, please come to the front so we can pray for you. But also, if you find yourself in a place where Satan has really stolen your thankfulness and you find yourself worrying all the time, let us pray for you. If there's anything you have prayer for, come on up. We're going to give you a couple minutes.